Hello, today I'd like to show you how we've created a low radiation home. Now the radiation that I'm talking about, there are three types. There's high frequency, which comes through the air from mobile phones, mobile phone towers and that sort of thing. Then there's low frequency, which is in the electrical wiring and electrical distribution system. And then finally there's excesses of earth energy, which is geopathic stress. And we'll talk about that one later on. Now we'll start by talking about high frequency. Now there are two main sources of high frequency. One is internally generated from our own routers and Wi-Fi and things, and the other is external that comes into the house from mobile phone towers and things like that. So the first thing I do when I'm doing a survey is to look at sources of internally generated high frequency and try and remove or reduce them. Now what we've done here, we've got a router, a special router, which I'll show you down here. This is a very low radiation router, but it's also, we've switched the Wi-Fi off on that, so there's no Wi-Fi generated from that at all. And we've hardwired the points within the house where we need to use our computers or laptops and even tablets. You can get special adapters so that you can hardwire your tablet and your mobile phone and get internet connection without Wi-Fi. With our television is connected to an aerial on the roof, and so it's not a smart TV. But if you've got a smart TV and you want Netflix and so on, that's possible without Wi-Fi as well, where you would hardwire it from the router. And the other thing that we've got here is a phone, which is an old-fashioned corded phone, so that gives off no high frequency radiation at all. So that within our home we've pretty much eliminated all sources of a high frequency other than my mobile phone, and that I keep switched off most of the time, and I turn it on in the mornings and at lunchtime and in the evening just to get my messages, and if I'm expecting a call then I'll leave it on. So that's high frequency. And now while we're still in the hall, I want to show you what we've done about low frequency. So this is in the electrical wiring. Now the first thing that we've done, we've got two demand switches, which I'll show you in the fuse cupboard here. And these are the two demand switches, and there's one for each lighting circuit, and they are connected to indicator lights which are here. And you can see the one that indicator light's on, that one's off. Now the way the indicator light works is when the last light in the circuit switched off, then the indicator light goes off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn on a light for the upstairs circuit. So I turn it on, and as you can see, the bottom indicator light, which is for the upstairs circuit, has come on. So that tells us that the circuit is live. And then when we go to bed at night and we switch the last light in the circuit off, which I'll do now, if you watch this indicator light, it takes a few seconds, but then it'll go off. There we are. And then that tells us that the power to that circuit has been cut. Now the other thing that I'd like to show you while we're here is a kill switch that our electrician put on for us. And this switch, when we go to bed and we flick the switch off at night, it cuts out all the electrical circuits in the house other than the one that runs the fridge freezer, the alarm system and the boiler. So that in that way we can have very minimal low frequency when we're asleep. Now in fact, the kill switch and the demand switch we would generally recommend for new build homes if you're having a house rewired, totally rewired, and also for if you're very hypersensitive, we might recommend it. But generally there are other ways of dealing with low frequency. So now I'd like to go to the bedroom and show you what we've done there. Now we're here in the bedroom, and the most important point about creating a low radiation home is to have a sleeping area that's as radiation free as possible. So the way that we've done that in our bedroom, we've painted the walls and the ceiling and the doors and the skirting board with a carbon-based paint like Y-Shield HSF 54 or 64. And we put a mesh on the floor under the carpet, which is like block copper. And we've earthed the mesh and the paint to the electrical earth, and that is to remove the low frequency EMFs from the walls. And then we put a shielding fabric behind the blinds, which is the equivalent of block Wi-Fi, to shield the EMFs coming through the blinds, so that with the paint and mesh on the floor and the fabric behind the blinds, we're reducing the high frequency in the room. But the important thing is to see how effective it's been. So now I'll take the readings with our high frequency meter. So as you can see, we've got readings of around 900 to 1000 microvolts at the window. And then as we come inside the room, because it's shielded with the paint, it drops off quite rapidly. It's down to 100 here, 80, 65, and well, around, yeah, so around 50, 60. But now what I want to do is draw the blinds, which have the shielding mesh behind them, and we'll see what that comes down to then. With the blinds drawn, you can see the readings that we're getting are between 20 and 30, which is great. We want the readings, ideally you want to sleep with 50 microvolts or less in your body. Right, so we've taken the high frequency reading, so now we want to check the low frequency. And for this, I'll lay on the bed and we'll measure it with a low frequency meter. So the reading fluctuates between 11 and 20, which is a really good result. We want to be under 50 volts per meter. So we've effectively shielded this room from high frequency and low frequency. So before we shielded the room, we were getting readings of 1300 volts per meter. So it's a massive reduction. So now we're in the sitting room and I want to talk about geopathic stress. Now I mentioned this right at the beginning, and it's an excess of earth energies. And if you sleep over geopathic stress for a long period of time, it can be conducive to disease. So if I'm doing a survey, I like to deal with the geopathic stress if it's present. And the way that I deal with geopathic stress now, I use a Memon, which is the device that's plugged into the wall there. The way the Memon works, it sets up a field in the electrical, out the electrical wiring of the house, and it sends out a signal that's 180 degrees out of phase with any signal that's damaging to, or any frequency that's damaging to life. So for example, geopathic stress is a frequency, and the Memon sets out a 180 degrees out of phase signal which cancels out the geopathic stress, rather like noise cancelling headphones. And the beauty of the Memon is it also deals with low frequency and high frequency and dirty electricity that are present during the day. And a lot of my clients find that when they've got the Memon plugged in, the atmosphere in the house is more peaceful and restorative. Now with a Memon, the Memon creates a coherent field throughout the house. So if you then bring a mobile phone in, that's sending out a radio frequency signal that's incoherent, so you don't get the full benefit. So what we've got little devices that you put on a mobile phone to memonize the signal, as it were. And similarly with the router, if your router gives out Wi-Fi, then we put a LAN on the router to make that coherent. And then with solar panels, there's a similar thing for the inverter, and also underfloor heating, there's one for that. So that is how we deal with the geopathic stress now. I used to put mats under the bed which deflected geopathic stress around the bed, and they were very effective, but the Memon does so much more. That's why that I've now, for the last couple of years, used Memon. So I hope that this has given you an idea of how we've created a low radiation home. And there are three main steps that we look at. The first of all is to remove or eliminate internal sources of high frequency. Then the second is to create a almost radiation-free sleeping area, which can either be with paint and mesh or with a canopy. And the third thing is to remove the geopathic stress. I work with EMF protection, and we have a small team of surveyors, dedicated surveyors, who will carry out surveys across the UK. Now you can contact EMF Protection at their website emfprotection.co.uk, or you can contact me directly through my website.